I watched this video online on YouTube of like this professor yelling at all the students who studied from an answer bank, and he said it was like cheating. And it just made me really mad because I don't think that's cheating. I think it's like resourceful. You know?
Hey, Quizlet.
Yeah, exactly. I study for Quizlet all the time.
And I agree. It's resourceful. It's not cheating.
Yeah, it's not cheating.
Also, I'm just gonna say this for an online class.
Folks,
I don't feel like it's cheating too much because it's an online class.
we are going to talk about the base parts of energy. What it is, so forth. And you will get some definitions on what energy is, how it works. You will get questions over this on the exam, on these parts of energy. Guys, what does that say on the screen?
Input 2.
What does that say? What did it tell you to do?
Input 2.
What did it say?
Please wait.
Let me ask you something. What connection did you have to that screen? It gave you some information. What was the physical connection between you and the screen?
Reading it?
It gave you information. When you read a book, it gives you information. How does it take information from just an inorganic piece of paper and put it in your head and you know what it means?
Is it because we can comprehend it?
How? Comprehend what?
Light
Ink.
reflects off of it.
You're comprehending ink and white paper?
The cones and rods make us.
Now, we know how it travels to you, right, on the light waves.
Right.
But what is it? What is that information? If you had to draw a picture of it, or give a chemical formula of it, what is it?
A message?
Think, close your eyes, and think about being on a beach somewhere with palm trees and the blue water and the sand. How can you go there in your mind and not be there? Where's the physical connection there? Energy is kind of like these types of things. It's not as straightforward when you really start to think about it. Energy is a force. Now, what is a force? Can somebody describe a force?
Anything that can influence matter.
Let me ask you this. Look at my hand. Sitting here. When I take it and do that, what left my body and went into it? Hand's still there. Energy really was transferred from me to them, right?
Energy.
But physically, what left me and went into it? Draw a picture of it. If you can't draw a picture and identify it, does it really exist? You heard the sound, saw the table shake. So what left me and went into it? And I've asked some really good people with PhDs in chemistry and physics, and they can't explain it either. Force is the ability to do work. Now, whenever I hit that, it makes the sound. That's part of the work. And then the table shakes. That is work. But when you try to figure out, if we can say energy, what is energy? ability, but we're using one definition to give a definition to other, dog chasing the tail. We're still not getting a definition of what it actually is. That's one of the things that makes it kind of difficult when we're looking at things like this. There is a little bit of an abstract nature to this. So, as we go through this, oftentimes we're talking about protons and electrons. We said early on that electrons themselves are real, they're there, but the mass of that electron is negligible. We didn't say it didn't have any mass, that was insignificant. So, it carries energy. The electron is basically that energy carrier. And as we start to look at energy and actually what it is, this is all, you know, if you've ever heard from physics, and I by no means even come close to try to tell you that I understand what these guys are talking about. It's a different field. I think a lot of them not have problems. I don't know. Physicists, they can see things we can't. Antimatter. What is antimatter? Supposed to be a big hole where matter used to be, right? The opposite of it. So evidently, we're in the universe somewhere. There's a big hole this table should fit into. It's got all the mass to it, so it left that hole empty. Kind of the way they described it out in space. And that's kind of hard for me to visualize, it being like that. How many of you could take nothing, an absolute void, and make something? By all the laws of chemistry and physics, you cannot. You cannot create nor destroy matter, right?
Mm-hmm.
So how do you take nothing and make something? That's what we're talking about. I can't explain it to you either. I'm not gonna try. But just keep in mind, there's usually answers for things. We may not have all of them. And when we're dealing with these little things that we can't see, electrons, even though we know they're there, you can see the cloud where they traveled in with an electron microscope. We can't actually see them, but we can see the trail they left of energy. We know they're there. So we're trying to figure out here how energy works, what it is. When you eat food, and you're going to find we don't keep the electrons and we don't keep the protons. So what do we get from plants? Energy. But what is energy? And it's kind of like saying, try to give a definition of time without using the word time. It can be kind of difficult. And as we go through this, keep open. The energy is there. We know it's there. We can't see it, but we can see the effects of it. You couldn't see energy when I hit the table, but you can see the effects of that energy being imparted upon that. So here we go, looking at, this is an introduction to metabolism. And look through most of this energy that we are talking about when we are talking about organic systems is going to be, it's going to come to us from a chemical reaction, basically. And remember, I want you to remember this. The law of thermodynamics. We cannot create nor destroy energy. There's another law similar to that. You can just call it the law of energy if you want, and the law of mass. We cannot create nor destroy either energy or mass. We can change the shape of it. We can change the form, but we cannot cancel it out. Has anybody ever heard of the term chaos?
Yeah.
Basically, on what some of these physics laws are saying, if we look, let's look at the earth and everything all around us right now. Would you say those atoms and molecules are ordered or disordered? They're ordered. I mean, like for our body to make solid, to make metal, whatever, they're ordered. That one of these theories is called entropy. And that means that everything in the universe, all the matter, is moving fast towards disorder. It does not want to be organized, it wants to be random. That's what is called chaos. So everything is moving for that. Every time we have a chemical reaction, we lose energy. There is no chemical reaction that is going to give us 100% of the energy. We're going to lose some. It could be lost in the form of heat, it could be lost in the form of light, but we lose. Nothing is 100%. Another thing are the terms an open and closed system. A closed system means nothing can come in or go out. Now, when we look at life and organisms, do we live in an open or a closed system on Earth?
Open?
Open. We got things coming through the atmosphere, sunlight's coming in, meteorites crashing, aliens landing on every street corner. They just look like you, so you guys can't recognize them. Right? Bigfoot. I saw Bigfoot one night on my farm. About 12 o'clock, of course, it's after I had a 12-pack of beer, so I'm not too sure about verifying it. But chaos, things are ordered now, but they want to be disordered, right? So when we look at this, keep that in mind. And open system means things come into it. Have you ever seen, you go down to the world of science, you can see a little ball is closed. Inside of it is filled with water. It's got a little plant and something like a beta in it. Fish. And that enclosed ball, how does it live? It lives because
I was going to say that the plant produces
plant
oxygen.
produces oxygen. There's protozoans and bacteria in it that are constantly reproducing, and as the plant leaves start to die, they live off of that. And the guppy or whatever, the beta will eat the protozoans, and the cycle keeps going. But something still has to come into it for that to survive. What is it? Sunlight. If you put it in a closet somewhere, it's not going to survive. So even that is not truly a closed system. And you will find, now remember this, in nature, there are no closed systems. They have to be pretty much man-made. But in nature, what we see, you don't see closed systems. This says, remember this, we throw a lot of terms around a lot, and we misused it. Metabolism. Metabolism is just the total of an organism's chemical reactions. Everything that's going on in you, all these reactions, that is metabolism. What is digestion? If we take our digestive tract in its entirety, mouth, salivary glands, stomach, intestines, pancreas, all the organs that deal with that, they do one thing. They do catabolic reactions. They take the big molecules and break them down into small molecules that can then be absorbed across the intestine and get into your system. That's all they do. They do not give you energy, your digestive system. It provides molecules that can get into your system that will provide you the energy. Once it gets into your system, let's say a molecule of glucose, the blood is going to carry that glucose to your cells. Every single cell, doesn't matter where it's at, has to have energy. Glucose will then go inside of the cell, and the cell will start pulling apart these electrons and hydrogen protons and separating them causes a concentration gradient, a force across the membrane, and then whenever the force just gets so much and it pulls that hydrogen back, that force is what is used to add a phosphate onto ADP and make it, it's conserved for a short period of time. That all happens when we eat food. We say we consume food, we really just rearrange it. Once again, you know, we take a glucose molecule, and you will find when we go through this, if you digest a glucose molecule, remember, energy is stored in bonds. When we digest that, break down that glucose, what makes up glucose? Carbon, hydrogen, and oxygen, right?
Mm-hmm.
The only two waste products we're going to have is carbon and oxygen, carbon dioxide, then hydrogen and oxygen, water. Two waste products from metabolizing in carbohydrates, water and carbohydrates. When we digest meat and then get it into our system, these proteins, when we go through metabolism, what do we have? Ketones, fingernail polish remover. Now, which do you think is harder on your system? Carbon dioxide that we breathe in water, or fingernail polish remover? That is why carbohydrates and things like that are not nearly as toxic for your body as what meat and fat is. So we can absorb our body. What organelles get rid of toxins in our body, did we say? Smooth endoplasmic reticulum. We've got mechanisms to get rid of some of these bad things, but if your body is relying totally on protein, you are going to die. You just won't make it that long before those ketones start to shut down your kidneys, your liver, and your other systems. In most of the diets that we eat, we get a mix of fats, proteins, and carbohydrates. Even if you're eating vegetables, remember vegetables still have oils, so there are still lipids. So we're getting a mixture. Your body, the first thing that it's going to do is to search out the carbohydrates. That's what it wants to burn for immediate energy. It does that because it's a clean burning fuel. You only get carbon dioxide and water, plus the molecule is so much easier to break down to get that hydrogen proton separated from. If you've got a big fat molecule, you've got to get inside, you got to break it down, do all these reactions to get it to where you can just start to pull them apart. So your body, it doesn't want to waste the energy, but it doesn't want to have to go through all of that work. If it goes through work, it's got to take energy already in your body and use that to break down the food. And the end is pretty much a no net gain. It takes almost as much energy to break it down as it does what you get from it. That's why things like the pure protein diet, like the Atkins diet and stuff, work. You're breaking down protein, and while protein's got a lot of energy in it, we're not getting it out. Now, if you're an animal that's got a little bit different setup in its system, they're designed to be able to get that energy out. They can live just on protein and do fine.
Like this carnivore.
A carnivore. Lions. And here's something else. If you were, to give you an example, to kill and eat deer for a living, and that's all you ate, you could live for a while. If you were just to kill and eat mountain lions, for example, you wouldn't make it very long at all because they have almost no energy. Every time you go up a predator level, you lose an enormous amount of the energy. If we eat a plant eater like deer or cows, we can get maybe, and this is a guess, I don't know, so don't put this number down, it's just for general knowledge. We might be able to get 30 to 40% of the energy that's actually in that meat out. If you get into something like a mountain lion, you'll be lucky to get 5 or 10. there is that much of a drop. And like I said, I'm not saying these numbers are accurate, it's just as an example. So you don't see too many. What do predators eat? Do mountain lions chase other mountain lions down for food? No. They chase deer and something else because that's where the energy's at. Every time you go up, and think about it this way, if we eat grain or plants, we can probably get 80% of the energy or better out of it instead of the 40% of meat. So if you're gonna have to feed a starving country, you wanna send them a herd of cattle or some grain. The grain is gonna go further. If you take the amount of grain that it takes in plant fodder to fatten a Angus bull or steer up to killing age, say 1,000 pounds is general, 800-900, you could have survived years, literally years, on the amount of grain. You've gotten that much energy out of it. And grain is just more efficient, easier on your body because it produces only the carbon dioxide and water waste, whereas the beef is going to produce the ketone. So it makes common sense. If you're a vegetarian, you're probably better off. Me, as I've said before, not only am I a meat eater, I am a predator. I like it raw and bloody whenever I eat meat. There's something, I like it. I'm not recommending it. In fact, I'm recommending you do not do it that way. But, it doesn't make a lot of sense to eat meat and to eat a lot. It just doesn't. But in my history and view, a cheeseburger tastes a lot better than asparagus. So that's just the way that it goes. But when you remember those energy levels, when you go from plant to an animal, you lose energy. When you go from that animal to another animal that feeds on it, you lose a ton of energy. Okay? Now let's talk about metabolism. What we want is to get food in our bodies for energy to survive. You'll hear a lot about different diets and things, and there is only one that is safe and that works, and that is cut down the number of calories. Do not cut out food groups. Don't cut out fats, don't cut out carbohydrates. You can control the amount of those that you eat, but don't try to totally cut them out. If you cut out fat, you know what your body does? Say you go on a diet and you're cutting out fat. Your body says, well, we're not getting any fat coming into the diet. So it conserves what it's got.
So it slows the metabolism?
It conserves the fat that it's got, won't burn it. Says we got none coming in, so we need to save it. So if you cut down calories and use a normal diet, you'll lose weight. You can lose a lot of weight. Most of you guys right now, at your age, you're probably taking in, you need probably around 3,000 calories, 3,200, maybe 3,400, just to stay where you're at right now. Give yourself a few years. And if you keep that calorie level, you will be twice the size you are. There comes a certain time and age whenever your metabolism suddenly goes down. If you're taking in that much calories, it's got nowhere to go with it except store it. And remember this, if you eat a Snickers bar with all the sugar in it, or any candy bar, it's got all that glucose, C6H12O6. Your body's going to use what it needs for energy, and what's it going to do for the other? It's going to take that carbon and hydrogen and arrange it into fatty acids and store it in fat cells. So you can turn those, your liver can turn those into fat. Why do you get hungry?
Well, I actually,
Physically now.
oh, okay,
What
never
I'm
mind.
asking.
I was thinking psychologically.
Well, that's a part of it. They work together. Think about this. You are sitting here and suddenly we put on there, on the screen, a little video of good hot steaming pizza and cheese oozing everywhere, or hamburgers with cheese dripping, and whatever it is you like. What happens to your body?
It does start producing more saliva. It's preparing itself to start digesting food.
Your eyes look at that, it registers in your brain, and it sees that on a screen. It doesn't know it's on a screen. It says there's food in the vicinity. So it does start getting the salivary glands to start to produce more. Your stomach may start to growl. Why? Because the stomach starts to produce acid and starts to move, and that's what causes the gurgling when you're hungry. Now, along your stomach, you have got nerves that come down the sides. Whenever you are normal, those nerves are just sitting there, and they're not pressed on or deflated. When your stomach starts to get empty, what happens? As your stomach deflates, the pressure comes off those nerves and they send a message to the brain, stomach's empty, fill it up. So you eat, and then what happens? It fills back out again, and then you get to the point where you're full, because if you eat anymore, you're putting too much pressure stretching out your stomach. So it's got its normal spot. If you smell food, you'll get those reactions. Saliva starting, stomach growling. If you see food, if you talk about food, or even if you think about it, you will. Now that is a combination of both what's going on in your brain, but the physical part as well. Your bladder works the same way as with the nerves on the side. When it gets full, it puts pressure on it. So you've got to relieve the pressure. One thing about dieting, and I have done this, and I know that it works for a fact. If you've got your stomach stretched out like this, if you will go a few days and put very little in it, it will shrink. I've done it. What I would normally eat, you shrink it down, and then if you eat half of what you ate, you feel full all of a sudden. So it's a muscle, and it will shrink down. And you shouldn't starve yourself to get it that way. It's just not put as much into it. As we have said, cell here there's a lot of chemical reactions taking place here. And we are going to lose some of the energy. And there are different forms, remember, of energy. It can be mechanical, heat, light, chemical. Those are some of the main ones in an organism. Notice here it says some animals can convert energy to light, as in bioluminescence. Lightning bugs, for example. Their abdomen, they've got two little chemicals in it. They can control which chemicals mix, or they can open up a little valve, they can let those chemicals mix. You get fluorescence for just a second, it goes away. Then they can replenish the supplies and do it again. So metabolism is the totality of the organism's chemical reactions. Remember, we talked earlier about what makes something alive. We were talking about water, an emergent property. Metabolism is considered to be an emergent property. One of the definitions of life, that organism must be able to metabolize. A metabolic pathway. How does this occur? Begins with a specific molecule and ends with the product. We can start with glucose, end with energy, carbon dioxide, and water. That's a metabolic pathway. And here's once again something we just can't emphasize enough that we often forget about. Every one of these reactions are going to be catalyzed by a specific enzyme. Enzymes drive these reactions. We talked about when something is catabolic, it's breaking down big molecules to small ones. When it's anabolic, we're taking small molecules, making bigger. Catabolic pathways release energy. Remember that. When we go through digestion and cellular respiration, that is a catabolic pathway. It releases energy by breaking down complex molecules into simpler ones. Remember, energy is stored in bonds. Cellular respiration, which will be the next chapter, is how we get energy. Our pathway is the breakdown of glucose in the presence of oxygen. That is an example of catabolism. Question on the test very well be, is cellular respiration an anabolic or catabolic reaction? It's telling you the answer. It's catabolic. It breaks down big molecules into smaller ones, releasing energy. Anabolic pathways, notice, they do not release energy, they use it. If you're going to make a big molecule, that means you're going to have to start making bonds and so forth. So it's going to take energy it will use it to get bigger. Notice an example of an anabolic pathway, making a protein from amino acids. Putting those amino acids together, making the bond and making it grow takes energy. That's an anabolic reaction. And it's one we often associate with, like when people use steroids to increase muscle mass. Bioenergetics is the study of how organisms use energy. Once again, we don't have a good definition of energy. This one is the ability to cause change or to do work. Forms of energy. Kinetic energy is energy that is in motion, that's actually moving. It's active. Heat is a measure of thermal energy. Whenever we have atoms moving quickly, they release energy. That energy is heat. Think about water. If we have water and we put it on a stove and apply heat to the bottom, that water will absorb the heat up until 100 degrees Celsius. When it reaches 100 degrees Celsius, it will never get any hotter than what it is. It can absorb no heat. Why? It's because all of those molecules that sit on the surface of water absorb that heat. It makes them move, and it will move so fast that eventually it will break free from the surface of the water. Surface tension will not, and the hydrogen bonds will not be enough to hold it together. And individual molecules then will float off in space as vapor, steam. So water will never get any hotter than boiling because it can absorb up to that point. Afterwards, it cannot. Potential energy is energy that matter has, but it's not active. Potential energy means the energy is there, but it's not in use, not active. Chemical energy is a form of potential energy. It is stored in the chemical bonds. And remember, we cannot destroy or create energy, but we can change its form. Here's thermodynamics that we were talking about. And read this. Thermodynamics is the study of energy. It says an isolated system, such as that approximated by liquid in a thermos, is isolated from its surroundings. Now doesn't make it a closed system, right? It's still got cold or different temperatures hitting it from the outside. It's using the term isolated, not closed off. In an open system, energy and matter can be transferred between the system and its surroundings. Organisms such as us are open to our outside environment. We exchange. things with it. This is the first law of thermodynamics. Energy can be transferred, but it cannot be created or destroyed. There's another law called the conservation of mass. That's the same thing concerning mass. You can change it, but you can't create it or destroy it. And notice, as I said, you can call that first law of conservation of energy, and you can call conservation of mass as well. There is a second law of thermodynamics. This one's kind of neat. Remember where I talked to you about chaos? Now think about this. You got a children's bicycle or tricycle. The one that's got the wheel, a pedal coming out, and he turns or she turns the wheel and makes the tricycle move. No chain, sprocket, nothing. It's just a little pedal on the wheel. And then compare it to a Harley Davidson. Which one's more simple?
The
Tricycle, right? What can there be to go wrong with a tricycle? Not a lot, unless the pedal falls off or something like that. But go up to Harley Davidson and just take a little spark plug off. All that big machinery is useless. Doesn't do anything. Remember this. We've got a tray. And on that tray is just marbles. You just take bags of marbles and throw in that tray. Randomly. What about if you had a tray and you stacked those marbles up and made a pyramid out of them that's about that tall? Made you a perfect little pyramid just by stacking those marbles up. What happens if you come along and hit that tray? All of that order, you've got marbles going everywhere. That's chaos. Everything tends to want to go towards randomness. Now think about us as an organism. Compare us to a little protozoan that you'll look at in water. It's got a membrane, maybe a few little organelles inside of it, not much else. And compare it to the complexity of us. Once again, we got not only, a protozoan's got one cell, we've got billions, and we got systems and organs that come together. You mess up your digestive system, it's going to affect everything else. You mess up your cardiovascular system, it's going to mess up everything else. They're all tied together. And here's the second law of thermodynamics to remember. The more complex a system is, the easier it is to disrupt. The more complex a system is, the easier it is to mess up. Look at bacteria. They've taken over the world 3 billion years ago. They're everywhere. They only live a short time, sometimes hours, but they can reproduce like crazy. You can start with one bacteria, and in a little bit, you've got a lot. One little thing I always told people, it's kind of a joke, but it's got a lot of meaning to it. If somebody asks you to work for a penny a day for 30 days, doing back-breaking work like working 20 hours a day moving rocks somewhere, and they paid you a penny a day and doubled it every day, would you work for them? You'll find at the end you're going to have several $1 million by getting 1 penny a day and doubling it. 1 becomes 2, 2 becomes 4, 4 becomes 6, 6, 12, 12, 24. Pretty soon, 10,000 becomes 20, 20 becomes 40, 40, 80, 80 becomes 160, 160, 320,000 can become 700. You're in the millions. Now this is one thing I can tell every one of you. If you, right now, in your lifetime, I know most students don't have a lot of money. you don't have jobs, whatever. So folks, you can go to McDonald's and get a job working at McDonald's. And if you will put aside about $15 a week and keep it there, you'll retire in your 50s a millionaire. $15 a week. But you know what happens? People like you get started. 15, you know, if you're putting away $60 a month, or say you put 50 a month, $50 is a lot whenever you don't have a lot and you're working and things. And then pretty soon, if you wait a few years, then you might have 200 or 300 in there. And if you wait a few years more, maybe 1,000, a few years more. Pretty soon, you want to get married, buy a new car, and you've got this little pile of money, $6,000, $7,000, $8,000 sitting in there, and you use it. But if you kept it in there, you could buy a car dealership when you reach 50 with it. If you take it out, it's the time and the interest. Interest may not sound like a lot, but it don't take very much percentage of an interest to do that. And figure it out sometimes with the pennies. You'll find you don't have very much money until you hit about day 20. And like I say, when you start suddenly multiplying 20,000 or 40,000, doubling it, it gets into some big numbers real quick. So that's the way the energy here for us, you've got to look exponentially like a bacteria. Bacteria can magnify themselves in no time, hours. We're not talking days or years. And it's exponential like that. 2 becomes 4, 4, 8, so on. That is why they have a simple system, but they're so hard to get rid of. They will probably be here when we're long gone. They'll be the last living thing. And this is that term entropy in the second law. And the second law says basically everything tends toward disorder. The more complex the system is, easier it is to disrupt. First law of thermodynamics, there is energy, chemical energy in that fish the bear is eating. The second law says energy tends to go to disorder. The bear wants to use that energy to propel its body, but in the process he's also going to lose heat because he's not a 100% efficient system. In other words, that energy he took in tends to go towards disorder in the form of heat. Living cells convert organized forms of energy into heat. It's just a byproduct because we are not 100% efficient. Spontaneous processes occur without energy input. They can happen quickly or slowly. For a process to occur without energy input, it must increase the entropy of the universe. So we'll try to remember that part right there. This is talking about order and disorder. Cells create structures from ordered materials. They can make a protein. They can come together and actually make tissue. So cells can make ordered, structured things. Notice, organisms also replace ordered forms of matter and energy with less ordered forms. And here's the one thing I do want you to remember on this part, right here, this last one. Energy comes into an ecosystem in the form of light. Leaves in the form of heat. As energy is consumed, it will give off heat. And notice it said, even if there is an organism who can organize matter, there will be a decrease in entropy, that disorder, entropy is disorder. While that individual organism might decrease entropy, the entire capacity of the universe still increases in entropy.
How can that be though?
It is, every time you have a chemical reaction, you lose.
Okay.
That's what it's talking about, you're losing, it's not going into a pure form like the bear. He only wants the ability to move, but he still makes heat. That heat is the disordered part of that chemical reaction that was lost. So even if you have an organism that makes new cells and things, that is structured, but it still loses energy in the process. Free energy, another term. That is the energy available to do work with. Free energy. Best little description is just the energy available to do work with. In other words, the energy is not in a bond tied up somewhere else, but energy that is you can use. Free energy, stability, and equilibrium, yeah.
So does that mean, for example, would it be free energy after the digestive process when it's already in the blood? Would it be considered
If
free
you go
energy?
through the entire process, there's gonna be some energy you have to put into it to get the system to work. Then you're gonna have a net gain. That net gain is free energy.
Okay.
You're not gonna get it all.
Right.
You're still gonna have carbon dioxide, water made, those are bonds with energy. It's not gonna be 100%. But how much energy actually makes ATP? The energy you can use. That's free energy. Notice it says free energy is a measure of a system's instability. Don't really try to remember that and all about this spontaneous change and so forth. All systems want to be stable. Notice equilibrium, that balance, equality, is a state of maximum stability. Here's what I want you to remember about equilibrium. Your cells are always trying to reach equilibrium. The only time they can reach equilibrium is when everything's balanced, basically. The only time in an organism's life, an organism, a cell, is constantly creating energy, using energy to make products to try to reach equilibrium. The only time an organism ever reaches equilibrium is in death. What happens if you reach equilibrium? You've done your job, so the process stops.
You die? Oh.
Living, the fact that we don't reach equilibrium is why our cells keep functioning and trying to get there. So the only time it actually does occur is in death. These two terms, exergonic reaction. If we have a chemical reaction that provides free energy at the end, in other words, it's energy that can be used, it is called exergonic, released to the outside for that reaction. An endergonic reaction is going to take the energy, free energy that's out there, and use it to do something. So endergonic uses free energy. Don't worry about that graph.
Oh, isn't this the unit that we're gonna talk about? Because remember when I asked you about how the water is obtained from the food, and you said that would occur during this unit?
With respiration. Yep, you'll see it right down to every electron.
Oh, Dr. Preston,
Yeah.
what exactly do you want us to remember? I remember you were talking about in chapter 7, you were talking about the proton pump and how the hydrogen is pumped across the cell membrane. So, I kind of got lost there. So we break down food and it's broken down to ATP, and then, or is ATP used to pump the hydrogen across the membrane?
ATP is, ATP in a sodium pump would be used to pump it out.
To pump the hydrogen across the cell, or? No, I'm talking about the proton pump.
The proton pump, and if you even say for respiration, that gradient is going to be used to make it.
Oh,
Now, if you had the sodium pump, you had to put energy on it.
right. The reason I ask is because, well, here I was looking at the picture and it's showing ATP going into it. It's going hydrogen is going across the membrane.
If it's a hydrogen pump, hydrogen pump, it goes, it pushes across the stereo protein across, and that causes the gradient, whenever it comes back to meet up with the electron, that's when it causes a force that causes electric.
Okay. Sorry, it's so loud in here.
No, it doesn't need to be used. It's about carrying.
It's basically the electric charges that pull it across, right?